This is Face the Nation, broadcasting live from the CNN IBN headquarters in New Delhi with Sagarika Ghosh.
Hi there, good evening. The Income Tax Department today has begun a probe into BJP Party President Nitin Gadkari promoted company Purti Power and Sugar Limited, and Gadkari may be called for questioning. Tonight we are focusing on the larger question that the Gadkari issue has thrown up. Should politicians who have access to public money also run their own private business? What are the lines that should be drawn between politicians and business? Let's get you an update on Gadkari and then we'll get to our panelists.
As more details of the web of shell companies associated with Nitin Gadkari's Purti emerged, the Income Tax Department swung into action. Sources in the IT department confirmed they are probing the source of funds of the 18-odd companies that are shown as investors in Purti Power and Sugar.
Source of the funds, the nature of the funds, or the ability of that shareholder to bring in those funds. If that cannot be explained, it has been deemed to be the concealed income of the company itself.
The man himself, though, spent a rather quiet day, choosing to skip his scheduled visit to Delhi, remaining in Nagpur. Nitin Gadkari's biggest support has come from the RSS. It's this support that he is counting on. While this trio has backed him within the BJP,
Nitin Gadkari
there are many others within the party who are questioning the move to support Gadkari, a fact which is keeping him on the edge.
What's becoming clear is that Nitin Gadkari will complete his tenure as party president. His term comes to an end this year end. But what could really take a hit is his desire to carry on as the BJP president for a second term. With Bhupendra Chaubey in New Delhi, in Nagpur, this is Shoaib Ahmed.
We're asking, do the relations between politicians and business need to be totally overhauled? Joining us tonight, Shankar Iyer, author of Accidental India, a history of the nation's passage through crisis and change. This is a book that has just come out. It is a book by Shankar Iyer on how crisis situations often cause change in India when nothing else does. Paranjoy Guha Thakurta, senior journalist and economist. Parth J. Shah, president of the Centre for Civil Society. We will also get you the views of Kiran Majumdar-Shaw, CMD Biocon Limited, who spoke to me earlier today. I began by asking Kiran Majumdar-Shaw, what are the larger implications of the charges against Gadkari for politics and for business?
I think if you have a good, transparent governance system, then all these issues of conflicts of interest, of eligibility criteria, selection criteria will get addressed. So if Nitin Gadkari wants to have his business participate in a contract, if such systems were in place, there would be no questions asked. I mean, even today in boardrooms, when there is a conflict of interest, directors have to be upfront. They have to disclose their conflicts of interest, and as long as they disclose their conflicts of interest, as long as they absent themselves when decisions are taken or when contracts are awarded, I think these kind of issues get addressed. So I think this is what we are facing today. Because we don't have all these systems in place, obviously someone like Nitin Gadkari, if he does have conflicts of interest, it is going to come to the fore.
Conflict of interest must be disclosed. There must be open declaration of the eligibility criteria of contracts. There has to be transparency. But Nitin Gadkari is saying in his defense that he's only doing what all companies do. Shell companies, routing money, crony capitalism, getting friendly loans from friends. All companies, all businesses do this.
It's not, nobody is blaming anyone. I think if he had disclosed all this, if he had actually, if he had actually upfront disclosed his conflicts of interest, and if he had made all these disclosures before all these awards or contracts were made, I think no questions would have been asked. But has he done this? I don't know. I don't know the case too well. But if he has made all these disclosures, then I think he has been upfront. But if he has not made all these disclosures, I think that's what the issue is.
And through all of this, does it worry you that the image of business itself is being tarnished?
It does bother me as a business leader that, business is being tarnished in such a way that profit is such a bad word, that, everyone is being lumped into the same bracket. Yes, it does bother me. And I think this is an inflection point in our, business environment, in our political environment. I think this is a time for introspection, this is a time for action, and this is a time where both politicians and business people have to make sure that they clean up.
This is the time that politicians and business people have to make sure they clean up. This is an inflection point. Let's put to Shankar Iyer. Shankar Iyer, you've written in your book, what sets the history of change in India apart from other nations is the fact that recurring failures and crises have not led to a systematic plan to fix the country's endemic problems once and for all. You heard Kiran Majumdar-Shaw saying this is an inflection point. Do you believe that these revelations against Gadkari is an opportunity for a once and for all change and reform to be brought in to this vexed relationship between politicians and the businesses they run?
Well, the inflection point would be in the 1930s when Mahatma Gandhi spoke about corruption in the Congress party. It would be in 1948 when the Jeep scandal happened. Then in 1950 when the first voluntary disclosure scheme came. And we could have had a series of changes since then. The point that everybody seems to miss is that while there is a supply side to corruption, there is also a demand side to corruption. We have been living a lie in the last 20 years that we have liberalized our economy. What we have done is only dismantle the license Raj and kept alive and expanded the permission Raj. Therefore, politicians in power are able to irrigate their funding of the business model of politics through the power of discretion that they have. Now, unless people wake up to the demand side of politics, politics has to be funded, it has to be transparent, and how we do it. And that part should be accompanied by taking away the power, unnecessary clearances which are required in business. These are two separate parts to the story. If you have, I don't know if you have read, some of the morning newspapers spoke about an infrastructure company lending money on a personal level to the BJP president. Now, why would that happen?
Right. Let's put that.
So the point is that in India we are constant.
Let me
What we have in India is that the political parties do what is electorally profitable, the bureaucracy does what is convenient, and voters largely accept what is morally satisfying. So whether there has been no conviction in the last 30 years.
So a conviction needs to happen.
Any major
a conviction needs to happen.
Yes.
Let's put your point about that company giving that personal loan. When Nitin Gadkari, Paranjoy Guha Thakurta was PWD minister between 1996 and 1999, Ideal Road Builders Private Limited (IRBPL) got contracts around 60 crore. Global Safety Vision Private Limited loaned the Nitin Gadkari promoted Purti Power and Sugar Limited 164 crore, which its director Dattatreya P. Mahiskar said came from his shares in the same IRB company which got contracts when Gadkari was PWD minister. Is this a typical example of the kind of influence peddling that politicians do in order to get funding for their businesses?
Absolutely correct. There's a very, very uncanny resemblance to the sweetheart deals between Robert Vadra and DLF. You see, when you talk about crony capitalism, when you talk about the nexus between business and politics, you must remember two or three things. It's neither new, nor is it unique to India. It exists across the world. Shankar talked about Gandhiji. I mean, there have been successive treasurers of the Congress party who were very, very well-known businessmen. And I mean, this nexus between business and politics is as old as this country. And in between enters criminal elements. You showed the picture of Gali Janardhan Reddy. And mind you, sections of the bureaucracy and sections of our fraternity.
The media, in fact,
is very much a part of this terrible nexus between business, crime and politics, because we help facilitate, we sort of provide the grease for the wheels
Today
to turn.
has been the day when the ugly underbelly of the media has come to light.
Naveen
and in
Jindal's
fact
allegations against Z News.
In fact, the sort of links between media barons and the corporate sector and media barons and the political sector. So that is something, in fact, I know that you're an expert on.
Okay, now what's new and what's unique to India now is we are seeing the sheer scale of corruption. As you know, it's gone up exponentially. Before 64 crores looks like small change today. The brazenness with which corruption happens. Mr. Raja comes out of jail after 15 months. He's given a quote-unquote hero's welcome, and the media plays it up. Now, what is it? At the root of corruption, the fountainhead of corruption in India is the way elections are funded. We have glaring loopholes in the Representation of the People Act.
Incentive to build a war chest, an election war chest. But let me just bring in Parth in here. I want you actually to perhaps dwell on a tweet that I received recently from Satya Priyan, who has tweeted to me that a politician is as much a common man as long as he does not misuse power. He should enjoy citizenship as others. Why shouldn't politicians set up businesses?
Yeah, they should. And I think, in my view, the problem actually is not so much politics and business, is career politicians versus citizen politicians. So what we have people that whose whole career would be in politics. Now, if you, for example, ask
career politicians, so they have to make money from politics.
Exactly. If you ask what is the official salary of Nitin Gadkari as a president of BJP, I'm sure it's not enough for him to even have a monthly meals to be met. Right? On that salary, if he has to support his family, how else would he do it? If he's going to spend all of his lifetime being in politics, he has to find a way of earning a living, right? And I think that's the two things, right? One is hypocrisy of the political parties, that you serve the public cause without any monetary compensation, and we have continued that hypocrisy all throughout. And secondly, I think the fact that you can spend a whole life in politics. So one quick suggestion would be that why not have a term limit?
Right.
Anyone in politics cannot serve for more than 2 or 3 terms, in whichever positions they are in. And that would actually figure out people to make the living before they join politics, and they know they have to go back to private sector. You have to make a living before you join politics, so you don't join politics to make a living.
In a democracy,
or to enhance your business.
No, in a democracy, you can't have such limits of what you can do and what not. The issue is one of transparency. The issue is one of accountability. You know, if we have a corporate system which is so riddled with loopholes, which allow such complex ownership structures to prevail, where you allow your faithful, servants to become directors, then there's something wrong with the way that system works. But if you look at the absence of transparency, you have glaring loopholes in various laws, including the Representation of the People Act and the conduct of election rules. You have a major problem with the way the accounts of political parties are audited. You don't have independent statutory auditors. What they disclose as their incomes through donations and other means represents the proverbial tip of the iceberg.
Right.
I mean, what they disclose to the, say, a body like the Election Commission
is the tip of the iceberg. And what you're saying is that the conflict of interest now has to be disclosed.
There have been clear conflicts of interest. Mr. Subirami Reddy is a Congress MP. His wife, for instance, was running an infrastructure company, and he was participating in a parliamentary committee meeting. I mean, there have been dozens, and who disclosed it, who objected to it? Other members of the Congress party. There are dozens of examples of politicians with business interests and clear conflicts of interest. They don't recuse themselves from such proceedings, and I think it's because of the absence of transparency, the uncertainty of being punished if there are instances of conflicts of interest, which has, resulted in this kind of,
rampant conflict of interest.
This kind of a permissive system that we have.
Is that the lesson we're coming out of from the whole Gadkari affair? Is this the lesson we're drawing, Shankar Iyer? Conflict of interest. There cannot any longer be this kind of tolerance of the glaring conflicts of interest that exist between politicians and the businesses they run. If you're in a position where you can actually influence your business because of your political position, you have to understand that that's a conflict of interest. There's simply no awareness, or basically it's just permissiveness that allows politicians to get away.
I look at it in two parts. The first part is the opportunity that is available to anybody in power. See, we spoke about, Parth spoke about the way 2 terms, and Paranjay spoke about the need for clearances and clear transparency. India's democracy actually has migrated first from voluntary mission-like political participation to professional politicians. Then politicians became businessmen. Now politics is actually the CSR arm of a lot of businesses. So you stay in politics to protect your business interests. So my focus would be first to get rid of the opportunities available in the system for people to mint money. The second part is, let's take our heads out of the sand and figure out how are we going to fund politics. Every party gets money and none of the parties want to disclose how they got the money. We have cases of parties sort of filing income tax returns of donations being income and paying tax on it. I can't think of anything more ridiculous than that. So first, let's get the opportunity out of the way. Let's have clear system. India is the only country which 20 years after liberalization ranks 181 out of 183 in a World Bank study only on permits. I mean, look at the state of the opportunity here.
As you say in your book, the license Raj has given way to the clearance Raj, and it's that clearance Raj that the politicians are milking. Let's draw an analogy with America. The presidential hopeful at the moment is Mitt Romney. He's a highly successful businessman. Now there is no conflict between a businessman running openly for the office of the president. Is the difference that here you become a businessman after you join politics. Your political career helps you build your business. In America, you have already built your business by the time you come into politics.
Actually, one thing, US also has a term limit. Nobody can be president for more than 2 terms in the US. So term limits is perfectly in line with the democracy, right? Secondly, I think career politics is also looked down upon most countries, right? They're trying to find a way.
So this is a very interesting point you're making. Career politicians are actually the bane of our democracy.
Yes.
People who are actually trying to make a career out of politics. In fact, as Shankar is also saying, it should be people with a mission and people who are not seeking to make a living from politics. Is that? I mean, do you go along with that?
I don't go along with that.
You don't go along with that.
You know, politics being a mission, journalism being a mission, politics for a commission, journalism for a commission. You know, I think we have to take a far more nuanced view. It's that, why are people in politics? They want to represent the people, they want to serve the nation. You know, it's not necessary that just because you limit the term of, say, the president, that will make such a huge difference. I think the patterns of political funding, the way in which campaigns are funded, I mean, I'll give you another loophole in the law. You have certain expenditure limits which are laid down in the conduct of election rules. But the glaring loophole is that there is no restriction on how much money a political party can spend on a candidate. There's no restriction on how friends and associates of a candidate consent without quote unquote his knowledge and consent. Again, these are huge loopholes in the law. Now, look at the way the Income Tax Act applies to political parties. Why aren't political parties under the Right to Information Act? You know, the Association for Democratic Reforms is hearing this case before the case is being heard by the Central Information Commission. Why not make political parties which are registered and recognized by the Election Commission a public authority? Then the RTI Act comes in, and then they would have to be far more transparent. So this, I mean, the fountainhead of corruption is the nexus between corrupt business and corrupt politics.
Actually,
and that is where the problem
if you look at Gandhiji's campaign, right, who funded his campaign?
Not
Adni, right? So business has been supporting politics all throughout our history, and that is not going to go away whether we want, however strict regulation we create.
The important thing is to disclose it, to make it transparent,
and not allow career politicians.
Not allow career politicians to make money.
Just add one thing, if you allow me. Just we need to have sort of political party law, just like we have company law. To register yourself as a company, you abide by certain norms of transparency and disclosure. Similarly, I think you need to have a political party law under which the party is registered, and they would have to then disclose their income sources, disclose their expenditures, right? Do the audited accounts, submit them to the public scrutiny. I think just like we have company law, there has to be similar political party law.
Right. There has to be law, there has to be transparency. Let's take a short break at this point and come back and look a little more at the sectors that are particularly open to this politician business nexus. Real estate, education, liquor, even mining. These are the sectors in areas where competition is freer, perhaps in IT or biotech. There is not this kind of corrupt practice between politicians and business. Let's take a look at sectors when we come back and look at the way forward. That's after the time. In the aftermath of the revelations against Nitin Gadkari's companies, we're asking, does the relationship between business and politics need to be totally overhauled? Shankar Iyer, you've written in your book, as I said earlier in the program, about the license permit Raj giving way to the clearance Raj. Raghuram Rajan, in his book, Fault Lines, has written that the license permit Raj has given way to the land mafia Raj. Is it certain sectors of the economy, land, we've seen the nexus between land and politics in Andhra Pradesh, we see it in Maharashtra. Is it mining? We've seen nexus in mining and politics in Karnataka. Are these sectors which are not reformed, where government discretion is very high, is it in these sectors particularly that political entrepreneurship is very high, and therefore are we to conclude that the conclusion is we need more reforms in all these sectors, not less reforms?
Well, you know, if you look at it as a business model, land, mines, project clearances, all these actually constitute the venture capital zone of, or the private equity capital zone of politics. But there are other parts also which derive. Every process in government which can delay a businessman, which can stall a businessman, which gives clearances for business people, are all, wherever a government official or a politician makes money, the money is shared with a political party or a politician. So I am sorry to belabor the point that unless these layers are done away with, unless the
but then where will be the political will? But then if politicians are going to make such windfall gains, why will there be political will to dismantle the system?
Simple thing I'll tell you, Sagarika, where there is no question of political will. We know since 10 years now or 15 years that the public distribution system is a mess. In 2007, P. Chidambaram, when he was finance minister, asked for an outcome budget. We have seen no sign of it because no ministry wants to give an outcome. Did you know that from 2007 to 2012 in the 11th plan, India's government department, the roads department was supposed to create 21,000 kilometers of roads. Only 14,000 kilometers of road were created. So all of this is such a mess. And now why this mess doesn't get cleared is because A, the political parties have no viable business model other than to sponge of public money. And there is a second part that I want to bring in here. All these SOPs that are being given by various political parties before elections are actually a kind of corruption, because what you're doing is nationalizing costs for private interests.
This is the privatization of the public realm. In fact, but let me put to you that the point that Shankar was making, that in fact there's so much money to be made from this discretionary power, so much money to be made from this clearance Raj, that why is there any political will to give it up? So therefore, we're looking at the Nitin Gadkari phenomenon. This phenomenon replicated across India is not in any likelihood of changing.
But I think before 91 reforms and earlier, right, we had a sort of license Raj, and many of the scandals were about issuing industrial licenses, right? Now we had the will to get rid of the license Raj, right, because we understood.
So we now have to have the will to get rid of the discretion Raj, so now we understand, and the clearance Raj.
Exactly, the resource Raj, I would say, which is actually natural resources. And there are sectors
in the economy, for example IT, where this does not happen because the government does not have that kind of control. But you don't buy that. You don't believe that freeing these sectors will take away the political entrepreneurs.
You know, I don't think life is as simple as that. You know, the license control Raj may be dead, but long live crony capitalism.
Right.
You know, I mean, when the government liberalized sectors of the economy, it didn't put in place regulatory mechanisms. And when you had regulators, there were extensions of the bureaucracy.
However much you reform without
and they were
regulators,
reluctant to regulate. The classic case being the telecom sector, which is often held up as a shining example of what deregulation can do. Except that there is an ugly underbelly to the great Indian telecom revolution, and that is called the Great Indian Telecom Robbery, as epitomized by Mr. Raja. So the point is, yes.
But no, we're at the end of our program.
Raja is a politician, not a businessman.
But are you optimistic at all that there will be disclosure, that politicians and business will clean up their act? Are you optimistic?
I'm optimistic because ordinary people
are now demanding
becoming far more aware.
Are you also optimistic? Do you feel that they're moving towards disclosure?
The moment we put a shining light on many of these problems, I think there will be far more emerging consensus to figure out what can we do to solve this.
What can be done? Shankar Iyer, I know you're pessimistic about change in India, but do you feel that this kind of naming and shaming will force a certain kind of disclosure, a certain kind of awakening of the conscience perhaps of the political class and clean up their act in business and politics? Is this a moment of introspection? Is this a moment? Is this an opportunity?
Well, for starters, 1991 was not voluntary. It is one of the myths of liberalization that we made a voluntary.
Okay, no, we can't go to 1991. But at this moment, at this moment,
no. At this moment, things have to in India. Things have to get worse for them to get better.
Things have to get worse till they get better. So unless in fact another full-blown crisis happens, they will not actually get better, and we're going to continue.
Exactly.
We're going to continue in politics and business completely in that opaque area. But as Kiran Majumdar-Shaw, I think, said at the beginning of the program as well, this is an opportunity. It's an inflection point, introspection for the politicians, for the business people, for also the media to clean up their act. Because if we don't clean up our act, then indeed we are robbing our country of its value. Thank you very much indeed, Shankar Iyer, Paranjoy Gohakurta, Parth Jesha. Thanks very much indeed. As the relationship between politics and business need to be totally overhauled, and this is the time to do it. 90 years. Thanks for watching.